What's going on, Washington fans, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Bleacher Report. I am Josh Taylor at Josh Taylor FB on social media, and it truly will be a Happy New Year. I promise you that, because this time next week is Black Monday, where we expect a lot of changes around the NFL, but more importantly, for the Washington Commanders, it seems like Ron Rivera will be fired this time next week, and the search for the new head coach will start, as well as some other teams around the league, like I said. But we're worried about Washington. We're going to be on the rise. We're going to have a new GM coming in. We're going to have a new head coach. This team's going to be building up. We have a top 3 pick. Looks like we're going to finish with the number 2 as long as we lose to the Cowboys. I'd say maybe at worst, 3 or 4. But nonetheless, we have a top 5 pick and potentially a top 2 pick. So this head coaching hire is crucial for a lot of reasons. And, we've been stuck with Ron Rivera for 4 years. We've been stuck with, GM Martin Mayhew for 4 years as well. This is the first actual whole offseason for Josh Harris and the new ownership group. So this is a big time offseason. We knew last year that Josh Harris and them couldn't really do much with the sale of the team. The timing of everything. They couldn't get a new coach in here. They couldn't get a new GM in here. It was just kind of like this buffering season, sadly. We just had higher hopes with Sam Howell and stuff like that. Didn't work out. But I'm going to take a look at some options we have here for y'all. I have some graphics for y'all of some of my top head coaching candidates that Washington should be taking a look at. And I think Washington, first off, I'll even say this. Let me bring up my guy, Ben Johnson, here. I think Washington is a perfect place for anyone that wants to be a head coach to come here. And I have 5 really good options that I like. People I've been taking a look at over the last few weeks. I think Washington is in a really good position for someone to come in as a new head coach because, like I said, we have the second most salary cap going into next season. It's been changing a little bit. Some sites say we have the most, some say second, some say third. But nonetheless, we're going to have a top 3 salary cap going into the offseason in a free agent period where I think Washington's going to be really aggressive and really want to get some talent in here. And then, like I said, with the draft capital that we have, not only just a top 3 pick, but 2 seconds, and it looks like both of them are going to be pretty high. One of them depends obviously on what the Bears do and how they finish, but nonetheless, it looks like Washington is in a really good position outside of teams like the Chargers, who are in a really bad salary cap, situation. Like, they're in the negatives right now. They do have Justin Herbert, but they have a lot of decisions to make. I don't see guys like Eckler being there next season. It doesn't look like Quentin Johnson was that good of a pick at wide receiver for them. They could have, gotten a much better option at wide receiver, but it just seems like there's other teams out there that are going to have a lot of head coaching opportunities, like I said. But I truly believe this is biased to the side. I think that Washington is going to be one of the top places for these head coaches to come here. Same with GM. I already did a GM stream and uploaded it to my YouTube channel at Josh Taylor FB or JTFB. And I think that we're going to have pretty much, I don't want to say like the pick of each one, but I think Washington's going to be top 2, top 3 for every single person who's interviewing for these head coaching opportunities. And Josh Harris, it seems like, according to a lot of sources and stuff like that, Josh Harris is going to be the guy that really leads that charge. We know that he hired Sheen as like our analytics guy. And like I said, we have the GM search coming up. But for me, I'm starting out with Ben Johnson. I'm starting out with a popular pick here. And some people have fallen off the Ben Johnson boat as of recently, but I'm not. Ben Johnson is currently offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. He's only 37 years old. Love that. An up-and-coming young guy. You see the graphic every time we play, like Kyle Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur and all this. Like all the coaches at Washington let go of that really bad team that we still sucked with, all those coaches. But you see the graphic all the time, and it's annoying. All these up-and-coming young guys. Mike McDaniel. There's a guy that I have on here, actually, that was with Washington around that same time. All these coaches went somewhere else, and then we kind of went through this coaching, purgatory, just like with our quarterback carousel. It's been bad for the last few years. I had high hopes for Ron Rivera, but honestly, it's been one of the worst coaching regimes I've seen in Washington, probably in my lifetime. Not only just from like a coaching standpoint, but from the GM Ron Rivera standpoint as well. The drafting, the spending of free agent money, just the whole roster management, the way that they built this roster has been so bad the last few years. I don't think it could have gotten any worse. And I think, Josh Harris and them, trading Chase and trading Montez at the trade deadline, it was like, guys, we just need to start fresh. We need to start over, save all the money, get as much draft capital as possible, and build this thing the right way. So a guy like Ben Johnson, like I said, he's, done really good things with the Lions. He started out at Boston College, then he went to the Dolphins as a wide receiver coach. He's been the OC for the last 2 years with Detroit. He's been there since 2019. I think he was just like a passing game coordinator or something like that. And then he's been the offensive coordinator for the last 2 years. And you've seen the offense got a lot better. And the thing that really jumps out to me is when you're watching the Detroit Lions, is just how well he's scheming guys open. He does have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams is starting to, come to his own finally. Then you have the rookie Sam Laporta and the things that he can do with that running back duo, especially Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield, whether it's running the ball or receiving. I think Ben Johnson just does a really good job of, scheming the offense open. And there's a lot of times, love Eric Bieniemy, but this offense that we've watched this season, there's a lot of times you watch a replay and there's like 3 or 4 guys in the same area of the field. You're like, what are you doing? This is so hard for a wide receiver to get that separation, run the correct route, get that breaking point done. Like there's just so much about the offense that's kind of like head scratching, not running the ball, not being willing to actually run the ball and oppose your will on a defense, get B-Rob going. We've seen how good B-Rob is. So I think this offense has some really good pieces. And I think a guy like Ben Johnson can come in here and help out with that. I think we obviously need, like I said, we're probably going to have a new quarterback with the top 3 pick, very likely. That's my hopes. I think we are in the market for either signing another wide receiver. I don't think Curtis Samuel comes back next year, or we could probably draft a wide receiver. But this guy knows how to scheme guys open. He has the top 5 in most categories. He has the 3rd most rushing touchdowns in the NFL, 4th most rushing yards in the NFL, 5th most passing yards, and 5th most passing touchdowns. So when you look at those main categories for offenses around the league, Ben Johnson leads the way. It's balanced. It's not like a pass heavy. It's not a run heavy. That passing game and the running game really complement each other so well. Like I said, it's just something that really stands out when you watch these Lion games. And I think that he could possibly be the next like up and coming head coach for the next few years. I just want to get ahead of that curve. I know there's been some moments where Ben Johnson, I don't expect every game to be perfect. So it's funny to me when you watch like 1 or 2 games and you're like, oh, look at that Thanksgiving game, I'm out on Ben Johnson. Like, what? Not every coach is perfect. I promise you that. Like, look at the Chiefs struggling. The Eagles are struggling. Every team around the league has their struggles right now. Even the San Francisco 49ers have been struggling on offense when they played the Ravens. They had no problem against us, obviously. So just be patient. And I mean that for everything. Be patient with head coach. Be patient with the quarterback, whoever we get. But I think Ben Johnson is a really good guy to get in here. And a lot of people say, I want an offensive-minded coach. I want an offensive-minded coach. I partially agree with that. I'm not against, I have some defensive-minded people in here. Matter of fact, the next one's my favorite. But it just, if you do go an offensive-minded guy, I want a guy that knows how to scheme stuff up. Kind of like that's what Mike McDaniel is so good at with Miami. He just knows how to scheme things open. He's so creative in that offense. I think Ben Johnson can bring a little bit of that here, kind of like what we thought we were going to get with Eric Bieniemy. But next up is a guy that's been getting a lot of, steam ahead. He's been getting a lot of hype recently. And, Mike McDonald is a guy that's been on my radar for a little bit. He was with the Ravens for a long time. Then he went to Michigan for 1 year. I want to say it was like back in like 2021, something like that. Yeah, for 2021. And then he came back in the last 2 years. He's been with the Ravens as a defensive coordinator. And one thing I noticed is that the Ravens defense has always been, really solid, really good. He's been there since 2014. He's been there for a while. He's only 36 years old. So once again, another young guy. Defense was really good. He left, went to Michigan. They dealt with some injuries in 2021, but their defense took a plummet down. Like, it was pretty bad. And then as soon as he comes back to Baltimore, boom, that defense is back up and running. And even at Michigan for 2021, that defense was really good. They tend to have really good defenses anyways, but I think Mike McDonald has that blueprint of having a good defense, but also just being able to get the most out of his players. There's a couple of guys I'll talk about. Ronald Darby, do you remember him? The guy who was really bad for us, the guy who couldn't stay healthy. It looked like his NFL career was probably over. And now Ronald Darby has one of the best cornerback ratings in the NFL under Mike McDonald. Like, Ronald Darby, like, I completely forgot he was even still in the NFL. And he's turned out to be one of the highest man and zone coverage corners in the league right now, which is ridiculous. And it's not all Mike McDonald. You credit to Ronald Darby, but then you haven't, once again, a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, who seemed like he was going to be done. He gets put into the Mike McDonald system and he's thriving again. Like, it looks like Jadeveon Clowney has that juice back to him. So like I said, he's been in Baltimore for a while. It's 2 stints. He had that 1 year break that he went to Michigan, came back. He's been the defensive coordinator for 2 years there. He's a great talent evaluator, though. You want to talk about Kyle Hamilton. You want to talk about some of these young guys they have on that defense. Mike McDonald knows what he wants in his defense, and Washington has the worst defense in the NFL. So it's crazy to me that so many fans are against having a defensive-minded coach, but yet Washington has the worst defense in the NFL. There's no reason to not have a defensive-minded head coach if you pair him with a really good offensive coordinator. And I'll even say, look at his head coach. John Harbaugh was a defensive back coach and a special teams coach. That has nothing to do with how good he is as a head coach. He has a really good offensive coordinator, and he's rotated. Like now, this is Todd Monken's first year, came over from Georgia. This is his first year in that offense, and they're hitting the ground running. Lamar's probably going to win MVP. So I don't think having a defensive-minded coach or like a neutral-minded coach has any sway on like your offense. Get the right guys, offensive coordinator, whether if you have a young quarterback or not. Once again, you want to look at the Texans, DeMeco Ryans, his first time as a head coach. He's a defensive-minded guy. He was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, played for my Alabama Crimson Tide, Roll Tide, by the way. And now he has Bobby Slowick as an offensive coordinator, a young guy who I'm going to talk about. He's one of my options. Up-and-coming guy, once again, paired up with C.J. Stroud. If Stroud doesn't miss those, 3 games that he missed, he's probably Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's probably going to go to Puka Nacua now. But still, that Texans team looks so much better. The defense has improved. They got a lot of young pieces there. A lot of, people didn't really know what to expect. They're kind of just putting things together, trying to figure out the puzzle. And then C.J. Stroud has the best, rookie season out of any of the quarterbacks. And like I said, Tank Dell's popping off. The defense looks good. Will Anderson has 7 sacks in the season. All these young pieces are starting to come together under a defensive-minded head coach. So I'm not affected by that. And I said this yesterday. You want to see how dominant the Ravens defense has been this year, by the way. They have only allowed 17 passing touchdowns, which is first in the NFL, 18 interceptions, which is third in the NFL. I think it's tied with somebody else. Only 5 rushing touchdowns allowed, which is crazy, by the way, which is first in the NFL by like 5, I think. They have 57 sacks in the NFL, which is first. So they have the most sacks in the NFL, the third most interceptions, the fewest passing touchdowns allowed, the fewest rushing touchdowns allowed. And I think they were also first in passing yards per attempt allowed. So this Ravens defense, and they've been battling injuries too. Marlon Humphrey's missed a few games here and there. I want to say he's missed like 4 or 5, maybe 6 games this season. He's hurt again. Kyle Hamilton was hurt for the Dolphins game. They had a lot of guys banged up, had another linebacker or 2 banged up, like depth guys. And boom, they just crushed the Dolphins once again. I know they're missing Waddle, but still, like that defense looked amazing. Mike McDonald just finds a way for your defense to be really good. And like I said, guys like Geno Stone, who has like the most interceptions in his career. I think it's like 5 or 6 right now, something crazy. And then, like I said, with Ronald Darby and Jadeveon Clowney, these guys you didn't expect much out of this season. And now they're balling. Like I love watching this Ravens team. And we've talked about how Josh Harris kind of wants to, this is a report that's been out there for a little bit. I forgot who said it. But Josh Harris kind of wants to copy what the Ravens do. And I'm all for it. You see the success that they've had. It started with Ozzie Newsome a couple years back, and it's really translated well to this modern day Ravens team. They've just built this formula for a long-term success. They're trying to get back to that Super Bowl where it was the Harbaugh versus Harbaugh Super Bowl. They're trying to get back to that. It looks like they're going to this year. And like I said, it looks like Lamar's going to win that MVP. So maybe you get pick up Mike McDonald as a young guy, defensive-minded coach as your head coach. I've already talked about Joe Ortiz as a possible GM candidate from Baltimore. Taking both of those guys. Screw it. Take them both. That's fine with me. You're not going to take Todd Monken, by the way. And you're not going to take Harbaugh, obviously. So give me Mike McDonald and give me Joe Ortiz as their GM and full steam ahead. And they don't have to move far. Mike, you can keep your house where you want it, man. You just come on down the road. We're probably going to move the stadium in like 2 or 3 years. But whatever, man. Come over here. Might even move closer to you. But we're in Landover. Same state that you're in. You're good to go. Just move on down. And then next up, this is a guy who I'm a little hesitant about. But I like bringing him up because it is a popular pick. But it is also, I wanted to get one guy from college. And I'm not too fond of taking a guy from college, especially like a younger guy. I want to, if someone's going to be young as a head coach, I want them to already be in the NFL. I want them to have that experience. So I went with Jim Harbaugh. And there's a lot to talk about with Jim Harbaugh. I'm not going to, I could talk about him for about 30 minutes or so because of just, the history, the things that have gone on this year and such. But he's the head coach in Michigan, for those that don't know, 60 years old. Yes, you probably remember him. He's coached in the NFL plenty of times. He had a 49-22 record in the NFL, 5-3 in the playoffs. Coached the 49ers from 2011 to 2014. And made the college football playoffs last of the 3 years. Has won the Big Ten in the last 3 years as well, beating Ohio State, pretty much putting Ryan Day on edge for his job. But the thing with Jim Harbaugh is the things that have happened this year. The sign stealing concerns, suspended for 3 games, and then suspended 3 games at the end of the season. All right, what's going on with this? And then recently, some other things have come up with some other recruiting violations, which happens at a lot of places, but still. There is some red flags with Jim Harbaugh, for an organization that's dealt with so much off the field stuff. And I know this is more so, sign stealing can be done in, college and pro, but the recruiting thing, of course, that's a college, ordeal. Should I be worried about that? No, but it's just, should we get a coach here that has these red flags, that has this off the field stuff, and bring them to an organization like Washington, where we're trying to clear that out. We're trying to get rid of all that off the field stuff. And in my opinion, it could absolutely be worth it. Jim Harbaugh is just a really good coach. But once again, you got to pair him up with a offensive minded, offensive coordinator, and then you find the right defensive coordinator. But I think Harbaugh is really good at also building up that team, regardless of whoever the GM is. If they bring in Jim Harbaugh, I firmly believe 100% they're going to say, Jim, we want you to pick your offensive coordinator. We want you to pick your defensive coordinator. And he would just build up this team. And, beyond that too, position coaches, whatever, assistants, whatever. But recently, this came out like 2 days ago, he also hired an agent, Don Yee, who also reps Tom Brady and Sean Payton. So this comes out 2 days before the Rose Bowl, which is today, January 1st. I don't know when you're watching this. So this comes out right before that, which is terrible timing, by the way. And it looks like that could be a possibility that Jim Harbaugh wants to go to the NFL. Like I said, there's a lot going on in college. Maybe it's time for him to get out of here. And that's fine. I don't blame him, honestly. The NFL is going to be so much easier for him, a lot less stress. He has a lot more leeway to do what he wants. But once again, where does he want to go? I think Jim Harbaugh would be that kind of guy to really pick where he wants to go, though. Some say probably the Chargers. I could see it just because of Herbert is there. But once again, terrible salary cap. You're at a tough division. The Broncos are kind of rebuilding. The Raiders are kind of rebuilding. But then you have the Chiefs that you're competing with every year. Maybe Jim Harbaugh would love to do that. Maybe he wants to be the guy to beat the Chiefs, who are down right now, and try to build up that Chargers team. We don't know. But at the same time, I would like him in Washington, but there is some hesitation there because there are some red flags of what he's, done over the last few seasons. And then, of course, like I said, with this year, with all the allegations, the sign stealing, and the recruiting violations, it's kind of come up a little bit, but not many people know about it. But there's just a couple of things that, I hear about in the college realm. But he's absolutely, you have to put him on the list of potential guys. And then next up is another guy that I've had a lot of people talk about. They've been asking me, what do you think about this guy? I think this is a guy who's kind of quietly talked about. But I think once the season ends, you'll hear his name more. And there was 2 or 3 other guys I really wanted to put on this list, but I was trying to keep it at 5. I don't want to keep it too long. But there's some honorable mentions. The Bengals defensive coordinator is one of them. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But there's a couple other guys I want to talk about. So but this is a guy I've had people ask me about, and that's Frank Smith for the Miami Dolphins. Offensive coordinator, only 42 years old. He's been the offensive coordinator there under Mike McDonald for 2 years. And, of course, we know just how explosive that Miami Dolphins offense is. Could you say it's led by Mike McDonald, his philosophy? Absolutely. But, Frank Smith does have a big hand in everything they do as well. I would love to bring that here. Like I said, something that we have been struggling with this season is scheming guys open. One of the reasons I like Ben Johnson is because how he schemes guys open on the offense. And then Frank Smith, same thing. But also in the backfield, what they've done with Mostert, who's just had the best year of his career by far. And then Devon Chain. And, even when he was banged up, when he came back, just hits the ground running. There's so much they do. That running game is so explosive for the Dolphins. I love what they do with the running game. It's something that you don't see much anymore. And that helps them get things wide open to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle down the field. And they still have some missing pieces. They could use some more help at wide receiver, depth wise, some more help at tight end. Like, they could get even better. But of course, they have one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and one of the best duos. I think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is probably the best duo in the NFL. And I think Waddle could be a one on some other teams, but he's a really good wide receiver too, nonetheless. But with Frank Smith, when you watch their offense and Tua's taking a big step, like I said, Tyreek Hill's in MVP conversations right now. Some people have Tua right there with him in MVP conversations. He's had a really clean year, probably the best in his career by far this year as well. You just see the Dolphins, they've had a lot of injuries as well. But also the offensive line, they've had to move some pieces around. The offensive line's gotten a lot better, so shout out to Frank Smith on that. But I would love to have that kind of philosophy, that kind of blueprint here in Washington, really just helping out this offense. Because like I said, I really strongly believe that we will have a new quarterback here, whether it's Caleb Williams, whether it's Drake May, Jaden Daniels, trade for Justin Fields, whatever it is. But taking a look at the Dolphins and how they really categorize and everything, they're first in passing yards in the NFL, third in passing touchdowns, second in yards per attempt, fifth in rushing yards, first in rushing touchdowns. And they have the most plays in the NFL of over 40 yards in both passing and running. And they have a combined 20 in the NFL, 20 plays of over 40 plus yards. I think Washington has 2, 3. I'm trying to think. Terry McLaurin just had that 42-yard catch. And then I think Terry had another one with Brissett like a week or two ago. B-Rob had a big play too. I think maybe we have 5. Maybe 5. They have 20. They have 20 plays of over 40 yards. That's crazy. That explosive offense. And like I said, it's not only in the passing game. It's not just throwing bombs to Tyreek Hill. It is also that running game, which Frank Smith has just perfected in Miami. And like I said, with the injuries, Mostert's out. Devon comes in, runs wild. Devon's hurt. Mostert comes in like the vet he is and runs wild. I love that backfield and what he's done with it. So kudos to him. Once again, revamp this whole offense, please. We need it. Build the offensive line. Get some more weapons on here. Get an actual tight end. Get another wide receiver that can just dominate on the field. That's on my wish list. And then, like I said, just get whoever our quarterback is next season. Hopefully Caleb, Drake May, Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels, to get things going and just build it up. Just this whole team just needs a complete revamp. Offense, defense, special teams, everything. Like everything. It's sad that we have to say special teams because our long snapper that we got rid of. But the last one I'm going to talk about today, like I said, I already mentioned him before. That is Bobby Slowick, a guy who was in Washington back in, it was 2011 to 2013, I want to say. He was a defensive assistant here. So that's funny. He starts out as a defensive assistant. He's only 36 years old. And he's the offensive coordinator for the Texans. Like I said, really just working that passing game as the passing game coordinator with C.J. Stroud. Really popped off with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz has had a really good year. They've been making things work with Pearson in that backfield as well, just getting that out there. But he was the San Francisco offensive assistant in 2019 and 2020. He was the San Francisco passing game coordinator specialist in 2021 and 2022. And now this is his first season as the offensive coordinator with the Texans. And like I said, C.J. Stroud missed 3 games this season. I think it was a concussion, maybe he heard something else. Can't remember. Maybe it was a shoulder. But he was leading the way for offensive rookie of the year. He was on fire. He was killing it. And even so, he has 3,631 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, which I want to say is the fewest in the NFL. I can't remember. I think I wrote it down here. Or second fewest. And 3 rushing touchdowns. And even with him missing those 3 games, they're 4th in the NFL in passing yards, second fewest interceptions, and like I said, just completely revamped that Houston offense. CJ Stroud looks phenomenal out there, but it's also helping him out. And they've had a lot of injuries on the line. And this is one debate I got on Twitter not too long ago. People were saying tell me about that offensive line. Yes, they drafted Kenyon Green in the first round. Was it last year? And then Titus Howard was the first rounder in 2019. But they've both been hurt. Kenyon Green hasn't played a single snap this season. You had their starting center get hurt in August before the season start. And then Juice Scruggs, shout out to Juice from Penn State, 2nd round pick. He's a backup center. He got hurt before the season started. He didn't start playing until like December. Jarrett Patterson from Notre Dame got hurt. He's been out for a while. They've been down like 3 starters. The only guy that's really been out there like steadily is Laramie Tunsil, obviously, foundational, one of the best left tackles in the NFL, but he's missed some games this year too. But they just signed some random dudes. They had George Fant, Shaq Mason. He's been healthy this year. They got Josh Jones from the Cardinals when they were doing their little sale. I'm trying to think who else is on their offensive line. But they've been without Kenyon Green for the whole season. They've been without their starting Quisenberry, the starting center. They've been without Juice Scruggs until like 3 weeks ago. And they've been on a 3rd string center. They had to move someone else from guard over to left guard. I mean, it was either from center or left guard to center. I can't remember. So they've been without like 3 starters and like 2 or 3, if not more, depth guys on the offensive line. Like, it's been bad. But like I said, they do have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. But at the same time, it really they went in, got aggressive in free agency, signed their offensive line. Yeah, they drafted a guy last year. Cool. That's not the whole thing. But like I said, the guys that they did draft the year before, like Juice Scruggs and stuff like that, they've been hurt most of the season. So Bobby Slowick has had to make things work with that young quarterback with CJ Stroud, some young wide receivers, like I said, with Tank Dell. But the defense has been really good too. D'Amico Ryans, I just love D'Amico Ryans. He's building things up the right way. But I think Bobby Slowick, at only 36 years old, is once again one of those guys who could be the up-and-coming offensive-minded coaches. He was with the 49ers. He was in that organization for a while. Like I said, then he came over to the Texans and kind of just brought some of that passing game philosophy as that passing game coordinator over to the Texans. And D'Amico's just let him do his thing. Like, look, Bobby, you're my offensive coordinator. I'm the defensive-minded coach. I'm going to worry about my defensive side of the ball and, my head coaching responsibilities. I'm going to let you be the offensive coordinator. That's how it could be. So if people don't want to talk about like, I don't want a defensive-minded coach, that's how this could be in Washington, and I'm totally for it, whichever way they decide to go. So I've talked about 5 guys today: Ben Johnson from the Lions, Mike McDonald from the Ravens, Jim Harbaugh from Michigan, Frank Smith, offensive coordinator from the Dolphins, and then Bobby Slowick, offensive coordinator for the Texans. Yes, there's some other ones that are out there. Like I said, there were some honorable mentions I wanted to bring up. But these are the 5 that I've really kind of focused on the last few weeks, because this is going to happen pretty fast. Some of these guys, Jim Harbaugh, they could lose today. That could, pick up quickly. Like I said, we're a week away from all this kind of starting or finishing. People talk when they aren't supposed to, by the way. You have the Dolphins, the Ravens, obviously in the playoffs. Ben Johnson in the playoffs. Bobby Slowick, I don't know. Are the Texans in? I can't remember. But even like with the playoffs and stuff going on, Washington's going to start this head coaching search January 8th. I promise you that. Ron Rivera will be fired Monday morning, regardless if they win, lose to the Cowboys. It doesn't matter. And honestly, for draft sake, as much as I hate to say it, I hope that we lose to the Cowboys. Because it would literally mean nothing. Like, I want the best possible pick for us. But with that being said, like I said, Washington's going to go after and get their head coach that they want pretty quickly. So expect this to happen fast. You're going to see these names pop up for other teams as well, but this is what I hope happens for Washington. I appreciate y'all stopping by the stream today, and I'll catch y'all next time here on Bleacher Report. I'll be doing the post-game stream for the Cowboys, and I got some other topics to talk about throughout the week. Maybe that draft pick, like I said, with the top 3 possibly. But I'll see y'all next time here on Bleacher Report. Peace. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to participate in all of your fantasy contests, whether it's the NFL, MLB, PGA Golf, NBA, even college football. This user-friendly app, you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. And my favorite part is that when you sign up in your first deposit and you use my promo code JTFB, they will double your first deposit up to $100. Now, how does it work? You pick lower or higher on stat projections that Underdog Fantasy gives you, whether it's passing yards, rebounds, points, you name it. And for each selection, say you want to select 3 people or 4 people, your odds go up based off of how many you select. My favorite feature, however, is sometimes I want to make 4 selections and I'm not feeling too confident in all of them. I love taking advantage of the Pick'em insurance to where if I miss one pick in my contest, I still get paid out on lower odds. So sign up today, download the app, and use my promo code JTFB to get up to $100 in your first deposit.